2 a.m. I was shaken awake by my best friend. In the dark, she clamped a trembling hand over my mouth. Then she handed me her phone, its dim glow flickering between us. On the screen, a message, "Don't make a sound. Someone's outside." Following her cue, I turned toward the door. Through the frosted decorative glass, a long, twisted shadow stretched across the floor. Someone was in the living room, rummaging around. We were staying in a rented party house, a place our group had booked for the weekend. It wasn't strange for someone to be in the living room, but this was supposed to be a girls-only night, and that shadow clearly belonged to a man. Who was he? The landlord? A thief? A robber? No, none of that felt right. He was holding something, a curved, sickle-like blade, and swinging it up and down. Wet splashes hit the door, followed by a sharp, grating sound that made my teeth ache. A chill shot down my spine as the coppery smell of blood filled the air. I froze. Completely. My friend's hands shook as she typed a few words on her phone and showed me the screen. I texted the police. They said they're coming, but it'll take about 20 minutes. We should lock the door and hide. Easy to say. Hard to do. Because like most landlords, this one had left the bedroom key hanging right on the inside of the door. To lock it, we'd have to open the door first, to grab the key. That would definitely alert whoever was out there. No matter how fast we moved, he'd kill us before we could blink. My friend started crawling out of bed, shaking all over. I grabbed her arm and forced down the lump in my throat, gesturing that I'd go with her. We clutched each other's hands, slick with nervous sweat. Barefoot, we crept inch by inch, barely breathing, terrified to make a sound. Near the door, I pressed my hand against the wall and peeked through the narrow gap, and stared straight into a pair of eyes rolled completely white. They were staring right at me. My blood turned to ice. I clamped my hand over my mouth and dug my nails into the wall to keep from screaming. Those eyes, they were Harper's. Her head had been chopped off and hung on the doorframe. Blood dripped steadily from her neck, drop by drop. Her eyes were wide open, filled with fury and disbelief, staring through the crack straight at us. Someone had sliced her mouth into a grotesque grin. My whole body trembled uncontrollably, but I bit down hard, refusing to make a sound. I squeezed my friend's hand tighter, took a few shaky breaths, and looked out again. Avoiding Harper's head, I spotted the man. Tall, dressed in a black raincoat, hood pulled low. He was pacing the living room, searching through drawers. Then, he stepped into another room. Now, I yanked the door open, snatched the key, slammed it shut, and locked it. Still uneasy, I braced against the door while my friend dragged a sofa chair over. Even though we moved fast, I could already hear him running back. "Hurry!" I hissed. A loud bang shook the whole door. He'd slammed straight into it. I spun around, and together we shoved the sofa hard against the door. The handle rattled violently. Cold sweat slid down my face. Then, silence. Until a familiar voice called out, "Aria? Is that you, Aria? Thomas?" I froze, staring at the door in disbelief. That sounded exactly like my boyfriend, Thomas. What was he doing here? Did he kill Harper? Why would he do that? He was always so gentle, patient, kind, calm. There had to be some kind of mistake. Just as I opened my mouth to ask, my friend yanked my sleeve, shaking her head frantically. Her lips silently formed one word, "Don't." That pulled me back to my senses. She was right, this wasn't the time for questions. And besides, I couldn't be sure it really was Thomas out there. I strained my ears, listening. If I made the wrong move now, it wouldn't just cost my life, it would cost ours. Then his voice came again, tighter, more urgent. "Aria, have you seen Clara? Do you know where she is?" "Clara?" I turned to my friend in confusion. Her head was bowed, face hidden in shadow. When I didn't answer, Thomas's tone grew desperate. "Aria, listen to me. If Clara contacts you, don't tell her where you are. Call the police immediately." "Why?" I blurted out. "She's a serial killer. She's wanted for murder and dismemberment." My body went rigid. I turned slowly toward the dark corner, toward Clara. Her hand was gripping mine, freezing cold. Clara had been my best friend for over 10 years. She'd always been timid, the kind who hid behind me since middle school, calling my name like a little sister. She always saved the best things for me. When my first boyfriend cheated, it was her, tearful and trembling, who stood up for me. Clara bit her lip, tears in her eyes, shaking her head. She quickly typed on her phone and showed me the screen. "It's not true, Aria. He's lying to you." I was drenched in sweat, my mind barely functioning. but I wanted to believe her. Thomas's story didn't make sense, and I couldn't forget Harper's horrifying eyes. When I stayed silent, Thomas started pounding on the door again. Aria? Aria? Is she in there with you? Don't trust her. The doorknob rattled wildly. Aria, she killed your friends. Don't believe her, open the door. He kicked the door again and again until it started to crack. I screamed and pulled Clara back, stumbling as my legs gave out. When I fell, my gaze flicked under the bed. A blood-stained knife glinted in the moonlight. Clara followed my eyes. Then, like a broken puppet, her head turned sharply, 90 degrees. And those pitch-black eyes locked onto mine, unblinking. 03. Clara. I couldn't move. Not even a twitch. Clara tilted her head in that same eerie way, then suddenly straightened up, like nothing had happened. For a second, I almost believed I'd imagined it. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying. She looked at me with that pitiful expression and whispered, Aria, that knife, it's mine. But the blood on it, it isn't Harper's. It's mine. She rolled up her sleeve. There were 4 deep cuts on her arm, so deep I could almost see the bone. Fresh blood was still oozing out. And those weren't the only marks. Scars, dozens of them, old and new, covered her arms like a roadmap of pain. They were the scars of self-harm. My throat tightened. Clara, what did you do to yourself? Tears streamed down her face. Aria, it was Frank. He used to hit me, and he filmed things to blackmail me. I was terrified. I couldn't tell anyone. You know how my parents are, I couldn't let them find out. Frank, Clara's boyfriend. I'd never liked that guy, not once. But she loved him, so I kept my mouth shut. I never thought he'd turn out to be a monster. My heart broke for her. I pulled her into my arms, holding her tight, patting her back as she trembled. I knew her parents, strict, controlling, the kind who crushed her under their expectations. Someone like her would rather suffer quietly than fight back. But our voices hadn't been quiet. From outside, Thomas must have heard everything. He banged on the door so hard it rattled, yelling, Aria, don't believe her. She's a sociopath. She's good at pretending. Those scars are her signature. Every time she kills someone, she cuts herself. It's her sick little ritual. Compared to Thomas, who had shown up here with no explanation and blood on his hands, I trusted Clara more. I raised my voice, trying to sound calm. Thomas, I don't know what's going on, but we called the police. They'll be here soon. Please, don't make this worse. The banging stopped. Then I heard him laugh, cold, sharp, humorless. Call the police? You really think they're coming, Aria? A chill spread through my chest. I could barely breathe. Thomas, did you kill Harper? No, it wasn't me. Then why did you say the police won't come? I'll explain later. Just trust me, Aria. Stay away from Clara. I listened to him talk, numb, my faith in him fading with every word. I just sat there, waiting for the police to arrive. I walked to the bed, pushed the messy blankets aside, and started looking for my phone. It was too dark to see clearly, so I felt around with my hands until I touched something soft and sticky. I picked it up and held it close to the window for light. It was a woman's hand. A severed hand. The skin was pale, smooth, manicured nails painted bright red. Blood dripped from the wrist, running down my fingers. Ah! I screamed. Aria? What happened? Clara, don't hurt her. Thomas shouted from outside. I stumbled backward into the corner, shaking, staring as Clara slowly stepped toward me. She bent down, brushed my hair away from my face, and smiled, cold and sharp. Aria, are you afraid of me? Her fingers brushed my neck, icy and soft. My whole body tensed like a bowstring pulled too tight. Clara crouched down in front of me, eyes locked on mine. Aria, she repeated softly, are you afraid of me? I forced a shaky smile. And no, of course not. She played with my hand, her gaze flicking toward the severed hand I'd dropped on the floor. I wanted to yank my hand away, but I didn't dare. Because somewhere between us, she had picked up the knife again. 04. Clara ran the blade lightly across my skin, the cold metal made goosebumps rise on my arm. Outside, Thomas kept shouting my name, slamming his shoulder against the door. The sofa wedged against it was starting to give. I prayed he'd just break it open already. Clara glanced toward the door, and smiled. Then she lowered her head, the knife brushing against my throat. She leaned close to my ear. Just when I thought she was about to hurt me, she whispered, her breath trembling. Aria, listen to me. Thomas is the real killer. I'm just doing what he forces me to. My breath caught. He kidnapped my parents, she said quickly, her voice shaking. He said if I didn't obey him, he'd cut them apart, piece by piece. That hand you found, it's my mom's. She was crying now, shaking so hard I could feel it. Aria, he's a psycho. He loves watching people panic before he kills them. You're his next target. Aria, please. I would never hurt you. When I open this door, act scared. He'll think you're panicking. I'll block him, you run. Got it? Her grip on the knife tightened. She pulled me into a fierce hug, her eyes pleading through the tears. Aria, live. I was too stunned to react. Clara grabbed my arm and pulled me up, dragging me to the door. She made frantic gestures for me to stay quiet, then placed her hand on the lock. Her lips mouthed the countdown. 3, 2, 1. The door swung open. Clara threw herself forward, slamming into Thomas before he could react. They crashed together, struggling violently. Aria, run! She screamed. I didn't think, I just ran. Down the stairs, heart pounding, the sounds of their fight echoing behind me. I stumbled, fell, got back up, sprinted again. This was a 2-story house. If I could just make it outside, I could call for help. Then I could come back for Clara. I reached the main door, grabbed the handle, and twisted hard. Nothing. I pushed, pulled, twisted again, still nothing. My hands trembled. I forced myself to breathe, to think. Then I saw it. The door was backward, and locked from the outside. My stomach dropped. I turned to the window. Steel bars, bolted tight. Through the narrow gaps, I could barely see the darkness outside. The wind howled, leaves whispering like ghosts in the night. A cold dread crept over me. This wasn't the same party house we rented. Where the hell was I? Then I realized the noise upstairs had stopped. Completely. Thud. Thud. Footsteps. Someone was walking on the second floor. I bolted into the hallway and ducked into the nearest room, slamming the door and locking it behind me. The window here was also barred. Panicking, I scanned the room, then spotted a wardrobe. I yanked it open, climbed inside, and shut the doors, holding my breath. My hands shook as I pulled out the phone Clara had slipped into my pocket before the fight. I dialed the police. 05. Beep, beep. Hello? I'm calling the police. Silence on the other end. Hello? Hello? I whispered anxiously. Then came a soft, chilling laugh from the receiver, a woman's voice. Aria, where are you? Let's play hide and seek. That voice crawled over my skin like a cold snake. I suddenly remembered what Thomas had said earlier. She's a serial killer. Aria, she's a sociopath, a master of pretending. All the blood in my body froze. Outside, in the hallway, I heard Clara's footsteps, slow, heavy, dragging something metallic across the floor. Each thud hit the tiles like nails scraping against glass. She was humming, singing my name. Searching, searching, looking for my friend. Found a little Aria. Aria, you better hide well, or I'll find you. I could hear her opening room after room, getting closer. I hugged myself tightly, pressing a hand over my mouth to stop the sobs. Then, creak. A noise came from the mirror near the bed. Through the narrow crack of the wardrobe door, I stared at it. The dressing mirror trembled, then slowly opened, and a human foot slipped out. My body tensed instantly. A moment later, someone crawled out from behind the mirror. It was Thomas. There was a secret passage behind it. Before I could even process what I was seeing, Thomas spotted me and came straight toward the wardrobe. He opened the door, clamped a hand over my mouth before I could scream, and pressed a finger to his lips, quiet. Then he pointed toward the door. I nodded quickly. He helped me out, and we slipped into the dark passage behind the mirror. It was much larger than I expected, but it slanted upward, making it hard to crawl. By the time we reached the end, I realized we had come out into a home theater on the second floor. Thomas checked the door. It was locked. He dragged every piece of furniture he could find and piled it against the entrance. Then he led my trembling, sweat-soaked body to the sofa and gently draped his own jacket over my shoulders. I pulled it tighter and whispered, "I'm sorry, Thomas." He gave me a small, tired smile and patted my head. "It's okay, Aria. I get it." Looking at him, calm, gentle, bleeding, guilt twisted in my chest. A deep gash ran across his shoulder, still oozing blood. I stood up quietly, found a couple of torn cloth strips, and tried to bandage it the best I could. I wasn't trained, but I figured pressing down the wound was better than nothing. He didn't flinch, just watched me silently, then finally said, "Aria, I know I owe you an explanation." Before I could reply, he began, his voice low and hollow. "Have you ever heard that riddle about 3 kids sharing a round cake, but they can only make 2 cuts? How can they get the most pieces?" I nodded cautiously. Well, Clara and I were 2 of those kids. I was adopted by her parents. I froze. Clara had told me she and Thomas were just colleagues, nothing about being adopted siblings. 06. There was another girl, too. The 3 of us grew up together. But Clara's parents, they were monsters. Obsessed with control. They wanted to raise her into something cold, emotionless. It started with the family dog. One day, I found it dead, neck twisted, stomach slit open. Then the neighborhood pets began disappearing. Cats, dogs, and one night, I found cat fur in our dinner. My stomach turned. Later, on the other girl's birthday, Clara's parents brought us a cake. They gave Clara a knife and said, "Cut it twice, make sure you get the most pieces." Thomas's eyes darkened. "Aria, do you know how she decided to cut it?" I shook my head, barely able to breathe. He gave a bitter laugh. "The best way to have the most cake is to kill everyone else. I saw her do it. She killed that girl, right in front of me. And I didn't stop her. Her parents held my hand and made me stab the body too, said now I was part of it. A witness and a criminal." His hands trembled. His lips went pale. Terror flickered behind his calm face. I didn't know what to say. I just held his hand tightly. Words were useless now. After a moment, he composed himself and walked to the door, pressing his ear against it. Then he turned back. "Aria, we can't stay here. There's no signal. I'll check through the passage. You wait here, okay?" I grabbed his sleeve, hesitant, then finally nodded. "Okay." He gave me a long look. "Wait for me," he said softly, and disappeared into the dark tunnel. When I was sure he was gone, I took a deep breath, reached behind the sofa, and pulled out a phone. It was mine. I'd dropped it here earlier when I was tipsy. Even if everything Thomas said was true, I still didn't fully trust him. He hadn't explained how he knew where we were, or how we'd been moved from the party house to this identical place. Clara was insane, but Thomas wasn't exactly normal either. Still, I needed him to get out. I quietly texted my location to the police and hid the phone again. Then I waited. Not long after, Thomas came back, panting. "Aria, she's downstairs. Every door and window is sealed. We can only escape from the upstairs window at the end of the hall." "The living room?" I asked. He nodded. "Yes, but we have to be silent. She's holding a chainsaw." A chainsaw. So that's what the scraping sound was. He took my hand gently. "Aria, I'll get you out of here. I promise." I stared at him, dazed, then nodded. "Okay." 07. We pushed the door of the home theater open, slowly, carefully. Thomas had said the window was at the far end of the hallway, the complete opposite side of the house. We were deep inside. We'd have to cross the entire second floor to reach it. The corridor wasn't long. This was just a split-level party villa, but in the dark, it looked endless. We crept forward, one soft step at a time, careful not to make the floor creak. From downstairs, Clara's sing-song voice floated up faintly. "Little Aria, open the door." "Oh, Aria, don't you trust the big bad wolf?" My blood went cold. I didn't dare breathe too loudly. Suddenly, something dripped onto my face. I froze. Slowly, I looked up. And there she was. Piper. Her body hung upside down from the ceiling, eyes bulging, bloodshot. Her limbs were gone. Her chest, split open. Her face twitched, as if she wasn't fully gone yet. I couldn't move. I couldn't even scream. I just dug my nails into my leg, forcing myself to stay silent. As we passed other rooms, the doors hung half open. Hazel's head lay broken on the floor. Bella's body was unrecognizable. And outside my own door, Harper's head dangled from the doorknob like some sick joke. My lips trembled. My knees shook so hard I nearly fell. I gripped Thomas's hand, desperate not to collapse. At last, we reached the window. Thomas grabbed a fire extinguisher and whispered, "When I break the glass, jump. Don't think. Just run. I'll hold her off." I nodded, stepping back to give him room. He took a few steadying breaths, lining up his swing. And then I felt it. Something was wrong. The air felt heavy. The hairs on my neck rose. Too quiet. Way too quiet. I turned, and there she was, Clara, standing at the top of the stairs, chainsaw in hand, staring straight at us. "Now!" Thomas shouted, smashing the glass with one swing. "Run!" I climbed onto the sill and jumped, shards slicing into my arms and legs. "Thomas!" I screamed. I looked up just in time to see Clara charge him, chainsaw roaring, and the blade drove into his chest with a sound I'll never forget. "Go!" he yelled, voice breaking. I stumbled to my feet, limping into the woods, tears blurring my vision. Branches whipped at my face as I ran, lungs burning, heart pounding. When I finally stopped, gasping for breath, I realized I was lost. I pulled out my phone. No signal. No emergency call. Nothing. Panic surged again. If I couldn't connect, even if the police came, they might never find me first. Clara might. I turned around, searching for any direction that looked less dense, maybe higher ground. Finally, 2 bars. I quickly dialed the police and sent my new location. A voice answered right away. "Miss, your area is extremely remote. Officers are en route, but it'll take 20 minutes. You must stay hidden. Those 2 people with you, they're both on our wanted list. Serial killers. Highly manipulative. They enjoy watching fear and suffering." My stomach twisted. "And one more thing," the officer added. "We just tracked your phone signal. Someone else has locked onto your location. Throw your phone away and hide, now." 08. They tracked my phone? My whole body stiffened. My throat tightened as fear spread through me like ice. The night wind rustled through the trees. Crows screeched overhead. Somewhere in the dark, a faint whisper echoed, like laughter. I shivered violently, tossed the phone into the bushes, and ran the other way. Eventually, I dove into a patch of thick shrubs, pulling leaves and branches over myself until I was completely hidden. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Then, footsteps. And a woman's mocking voice. "Well, Thomas, how's that acting going? Lost her already?" "Clara." My heart stopped. Thomas's voice followed, cold, unfamiliar. "Quit talking and keep searching. She can't be far." I froze. His voice, it wasn't the same man who'd comforted me before. It was sharp, cruel. Clara laughed softly. "Look at you. Can't even handle one girl. She still doesn't trust you. Guess I'll have to finish the job myself." A flick, then a click. Thomas lighting a cigarette. "Maybe if you hadn't insisted I trick her into signing that insurance policy, things would have gone smoother. She's not stupid, Clara. Said she wanted her dad's lawyer to look at it first." Insurance policy? I felt the world tilt. I remembered that trip to Thailand. Thomas had mentioned a life insurance plan then, said it was for my safety. I'd refused. He hadn't pushed. He'd always been so gentle, polite. I'd never imagined this. Clara giggled. "So it's my fault now? Please. You're useless. My parents should have taught you better." Thomas's tone darkened. "Keep talking, Clara. I dare you." "Relax," she said lightly. "Just find her. I think she figured out her phone was being tracked. But she's injured, she won't get far." She paused, then added with a cruel laugh, "And don't act so innocent. Remember who killed that cat? You almost got caught, and I covered for you. You think your little horror story fooled her? Her dad's a screenwriter, she grew up spotting fake scripts. You couldn't trick her if you tried." "Shut up, Clara," Thomas hissed, voice low and dangerous. For once, she actually did. Their footsteps faded into the trees. Only when I could no longer hear them did I dare move. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely feel them. Then, a shadow fell over me. The moonlight vanished from my hands. I looked up. Thomas was crouching above me, eyes glinting in the dark. "Found you, Aria. 09. What are you doing?" I dug my nails into my palm, forcing myself to stay calm. He smiled darkly, his eyes filled with shadows. "Didn't you hear everything just now, Aria? You want money? Fine. I'll give you however much you want, just don't touch me." He gave a short, mocking laugh. "Money? If only it were that simple." Then, as if switching masks, he softened his tone, grabbed my arm, and said, "Get up. I'm taking you out of here." "You?" I stared at him, completely lost. What was he planning now? What I said earlier was true. "Hurry, before Clara catches up." He pulled me along, my injured leg dragging painfully behind me. But before we made it 2 steps, I saw a shadow move ahead, Clara, holding a chainsaw. She stepped into the light. Blood covered her entire body, and something unspeakable hung around her neck. Her eyes bulged, veins bursting red in her sockets. She looked like a demon straight from hell. Her twisted smile spread wide as she growled, "Thomas, you'd betray us for a woman?" Her gaze turned on me, venomous. "She's nothing but prey." Thomas stepped in front of me protectively. "Clara, let her go. We don't have to keep doing this." Clara let out a chilling laugh, her grin stretching unnaturally. She started the chainsaw and charged at us. Thomas reached out to stop her, but the blade grazed him. He screamed, blood splattering across my face. "Run, Aria!" he shouted. I shook my head, then, under his trembling gaze, walked behind Clara. Grabbing the fruit knife I'd pocketed earlier, I drove it hard into her back. Her body jerked. The chainsaw slipped from her hands. She fell, twitching, then went still. Is she dead?" I asked blankly, still holding the knife. Thomas, clutching his bleeding arm, knelt to check her pulse. I waited for his answer, heart pounding. But instead of replying, he stood and pulled me into his arms, pressing a kiss to my forehead. "It's over now, Aria. You're safe." I cried quietly against his chest for a long time. Then I lifted my head, helped him up, and said, "Let's go." He shook his head, eyes full of sorrow. "Aria, I've waited too long for this moment. I was a coward, always too afraid to resist them. But being with you, being near you, made me remember what it means to live." His voice broke. "I've done terrible things. Even if they forced me, it's no excuse. I'm guilty. I'll confess to the police," but he hesitated, tears in his eyes. "Before that, can I hold you one last time?" His plea was so raw that I couldn't refuse. I stepped forward and hugged him tightly. 10. "You're too kind, Aria," he murmured, burying his face in my neck. But then, he laughed softly by my ear. "Did you really think I'd say that, Aria?" My breath hitched. Every hair on my body stood on end. Cold metal pressed against my stomach. His whisper was low and slick, like a poisonous snake. "I've wanted to kill her for a long time. But just killing her outright? Boring." He clicked his tongue. "Such touching sisterly love. How about I send you both on your way together?" The blade slid up, tearing my shirt, leaving a burning cut along my side. I gasped in pain, trembling like a fish on the chopping board. "Thomas." He moved the knife to my throat, his tone suddenly tender. "That lost, terrified look, it's beautiful. I bet your head would make the perfect piece of art." He raised the knife to strike, but his hand froze midair. His eyes widened in disbelief as he looked down at his chest. I had plunged the same fruit knife straight into his heart, and twisted. He staggered. Expressionless now, I watched the life fade from his eyes. Then I knelt beside Clara's fallen body. To my surprise, she opened her eyes weakly, gave me a small, tired smile. I held her as distant sirens wailed closer. "It's over, Clara," I whispered. 11. "My name is Aria. Before I was adopted, my sister and I grew up together in an orphanage. One day, a couple came. They wanted to adopt her. The director called me into his office, gave me an injection, like he always did. When I woke up, I was covered in bruises again. But this time, he didn't threaten me using my sister. He just smiled. 'Your sister's lucky. Someone wants to adopt her. But they only want one child.' I looked up, stunned. 'Really?' He patted my cheek. 'Of course. But they don't like kids with family ties. If they find out she has a sister.' I fell to my knees. 'I understand. Please, let her go.' He smiled in satisfaction. I went back and told my sister not to mention she had a sibling, especially not to her new parents. She nodded, innocent and trusting, and left with the couple. I thought I'd saved her. But I was wrong. I'd sent her straight into another nightmare. When we met again, she was nothing but ashes and a photo. The police said she'd been tortured and burned alive. The killer was a serial murderer, someone who enjoyed breaking victims' minds before ending their lives. I searched for years but found nothing. Until the day Clara found me and told me a story that chilled my blood. A couple of murderers had adopted 3 children. They raised them to kill for pleasure. Obedience meant food and comfort, disobedience meant hunger and beatings. Thomas thrived in that cruelty. Clara did not. She tried to expose them, but they always watched her. One day, they made her witness the murder of the girl she'd grown up with, and forced her to carve off the flesh to cook dinner. When Clara told me this, sobbing, I sat there numb. Aria, she cried, I couldn't save your sister. I'm so sorry. Please help me. I can't live like this anymore. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to her. Looking at her, broken and haunted, I thought of my sister's ashes. When I learned that Thomas's next target was me, Clara and I decided to end it together. Harper, Clara, Hazel, Bella, they weren't innocent victims. They were part of that same twisted system behind the orphanage. I pretended to be naive and wealthy, easy prey. They took the bait. Clara and I set up hidden cameras all over the house, including that secret passage. Once everything was done, the footage would automatically upload to the police. That night, after drinking, we hid our phones in the theater room and arranged everything carefully. Then, hand in hand, we lay down on the bed, leaning into each other, waiting for it all to end.